Yes. Oh, mic's a little bit low. Let's get it up here. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the HTG podcast, HTG crew. I hope you guys had an awesome week last week. Siwoo Kim coming away with that win there last week. Really stones putt there on the 17th. A great event. Was awesome to watch Patrick Cantlay absolutely go off on Sunday. Those boys were out there making birdies in the desert. And I actually live in Southern California, so not too far away from the side of the event there at PGA West. Unfortunate with obviously the situation we're in. I wasn't able to just go out there and check out the event myself, but it was a great event. I love that golf course, those golf courses, particularly the stadium course. I've played it myself a couple of times, and it's a test, and it's a good one. It's a nice golf course to play. So props to Siwoo. This week on that stadium course, did not record a single bogey, which is just, it's stellar performance. It is what it is. And this just continues the success of Siwoo Kim on these Pete Dye designs, right? This was Siwoo's third PGA Tour title. And he just plays so well at these Dye designs, these target golf style golf courses, right? So hats off to Siwoo. He's a guy that we always know has the upside to win, especially at Dye courses. So not entirely surprised that he was able to come away with the victory. And man, that putt he dropped on the 17th. Siwoo, for as stellar of an iron player as he is, and he's pretty solid off the tee as well. So for as good of a ball striker as he is, you just don't usually trust him to make the big putt in the big spot. And that was a spot where I sort of expected Siwoo to miss, but pouring that one in on 17 to all but seal the deal. Cantlay did end up making a birdie on the 18th, but Siwoo was able to make his par there, hit the green in regulation, and just get 2 putts home for the win. So really, really good golf was played all week long by a lot of these guys that finished at the top of the leaderboard. They pushed it into, that low 20s to mid 20s number there for the event. And that golf course, those 2 golf courses they were playing with La Quinta would have been an easier rotation. So with La Quinta taken out of the rotation, for them to post those numbers was fun. It made for a really fun event. Cam Davis, man, this guy continues to churn out great results for us every time we roster him in DraftKings. The putter was unconscious this past week at American Express. And we know he's a guy that can also pound it out there with the driver and gain strokes off the tee, not only through driving distance, but through accuracy as well. So Cam Davis, definitely a guy to keep our eye on, as we normally do here at the HTG podcast. He's done nothing but pay off for us when we roster him. A guy who didn't pay off for us last week, Scotty Scheffler, definitely looked rusty, ended up missing the cut by a stroke. I'm fine with that, to be honest, because hopefully that just gives us an opportunity this week to buy in low on one Mr. Scheffler, because look, we know what kind of player Scotty Scheffler is. He's shown us his potential. We're not going to let 1 week derail us or deter us from rostering this guy. So I think a lot of people will do that. A lot of minds will take the miscut and sort of dismiss Scheffler this week. So we want to go ahead and make sure we take advantage of that this week. So with that being said, that sort of recaps the American Express. Let's go ahead and get into the Farmers Insurance Open. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and spark up. Should have done that to start the show, but I'm just so excited to talk golf today. I just hopped right into it. That Sunday finish was something else. Those dudes were on fire. Absolutely on fire. So, just making birdies everywhere. Both Cantlay and Siwoo birdied 2 of the last 3. I think Cantlay birdied 3 of his last 4 coming down the stretch. So, yeah, just pretty hype on PGA Tour right now. All right, so I'm smoking Premium Indoor Shake by Kushagram. So they sell this like in a bag of shake. They sell it by the half ounce. And they call it premium because I guess it comes from like the shake from their premium flowers that they sell as top shelf flowers. So, it smelled good. Not too stemmy, so figured we'll give it a shot for the podcast. It's a hybrid, and it's testing at 20.26% THC. Yeah, it tastes premium. Definitely has that citrusy sort of. I imagine it leans more sativa than it does indica in its hybrid makeup. Definitely getting that more diesely, citrusy sort of flavor. But yeah, I mean, for the price point of this stuff, so far so good. We'll see how it makes me feel. And you guys see my cat there in the frame. I didn't even notice her. She's taking a nap right here. Say hi, Miss Kitty. Say hi to the people, Miss Kitty. Yep. No. Cats never do what they're told. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the 2021 Farmers Insurance Open. We are playing in San Diego, not too far from where I am here in Newport Beach, at Torrey Pines, the classic Torrey Pines. The South Course is the more infamous of the courses, and we'll also be playing the North Course this week. The South Course, par 72, plays at 7,698 yards. Those greens are POA surfaces. The North Course, also a par 72, also a long golf course, plays at 7,596 yards, and those greens are bent grass. Mark Leishman is our defending champion at 14 under. And as far as weather goes, forecasts call for rain on Friday, and there's actually a high percentage of rain on Friday. But calm wind conditions all week, 7 to 10 miles an hour. So I expect these guys to score fairly well, and we might even push that 20 under number again. Especially if we do get rain on Friday and the golf course plays a bit easier over the weekend than expected, we could push into that range again here. As far as our golfer prototype, I mentioned that both of these golf courses are long. Par 72, 7,698 yards on the South Course, 7,596 yards on the North Course. You're going to need guys that can bomb it out there, as you can imagine. At the very least, guys that gain strokes off the tee. But ideally, we want to target guys that gain in driving distance over the field, and gain significantly in driving distance over the field is really what we're looking for. So our golfer prototype this week, in our fantasynational.com statistical model, we are looking at strokes gained off the tee, driving distance, proximity gained from 200 yards and out, like 200 yards plus. So who's hitting it closer to the pin when they have over 200 yards for their approach. Proximity for approaches 175 to 200 yards out. Strokes gained on par fives. And then we sprinkled in a little bit of strokes gained putting as well. So you can sort of tell what the theme is here. We want to build a narrative around long hitters, right? Long hitters that can also be accurate enough that they're gaining strokes off the tee against the field. And if you're not going to be a long hitter, then you better be a phenomenal long iron player. Someone that really, really, really makes your hay in that 200 plus approach range or the 175 to 200 yard approach range. So those are really the only two styles that really seem to succeed around Torrey Pines, especially the South Course. You have to be either a stellar long iron player or you have to be able to bomb it off the tee. So if you don't have either one of those skill sets to an elite level, I'm likely fading you this week as a golfer in the Draftkings player pool, unless the price is low enough that I can justify it. So any of these sort of higher price guys in both the mid shelf and the top shelf plays that either don't have a well above average long iron game or well above average driving game, at least in driving distance, we're going to leave them off the tout list for this week. So that's the general strategy, guys. If you want to take that strategy and maybe apply it to some names that I don't mention, because I don't mention everyone here, the podcast would be too long if I did. So there are definitely some interests I have outside of who I mention here, but just apply that general theme. You want a guy that's either going to hit the ball long and somewhat accurately off the tee, or a guy that is just a stellar long iron player. And with that being said, actually, first, let me give you withdraws. Mark Hubbard has withdrawn, and so has Kaimu Johnson, who's supposed to be making his PGA Tour debut this week. It's a bummer. He tested positive for COVID, so, I mean, that's 27-year-old, young man. That's sort of a bummer that, getting ready to make your PGA Tour debut, something like that happens. So hopefully he gets well soon and bounces back and is able to make his debut in an event, here soon to come. So I'm going to respark this thing, and we're going to get into the top shelf plays. I mean, the top shelf plays are pretty tough to distinguish between this week. Oh, there's some fucking ash still on that thing. Let's get that off there. Yeah, the top shelf plays this week, really, really difficult to parse through because they all look so strong, and the top end of the mid shelf looks really strong too. So we're gonna have some decisions to make here with the top end of our salary ranges. To kick off the top shelf plays, it's Jon Rahm at $11,300, 20% projected ownership. And Rahm fits that narrative, right? He's long off the tee. He's accurate off the tee. He's second in this field in strokes gained off the tee over the last 24 measured rounds. He kills par fives. He comes in fifth in that metric. I believe he came second here last year to Leishman. If I'm not mistaken, he did come second here to Leishman last year. Rahm looks incredibly strong. You can't go wrong. 20% ownership, that's absolutely fine. These guys up at the top end of the pricing range are all in sort of the same ownership range. And I think you have to grab at least one of them. You probably can only get one of them because of the strength of the mid-tier, but you have to grab at least one of them because of their winning upside. So Jon Rahm, $11,300, 20% projected ownership. Looks like a strong play. Rory McIlroy, coming in at an $11,000 price tag, 22.5% projected ownership, and he's a guy who I mentioned coming into Tournament of Champions. I expect Rory to have a big year this year. He sort of has stalled since the PGA Tour restart last year, hasn't won since, and we know that this guy at his best is probably the best player in the world, arguably, if not with, guys like Dustin Johnson, who, when they're at their best, they are just, head and shoulders above the rest of the world. So you can't go wrong with Rory McIlroy at $11,000 flat, 22.5% projected ownership. I mean, you're not going to be able to get McIlroy and Rahm, so that's just going to have to be a decision point. If you're playing multiple lineups, definitely spread your shares amongst both of these guys because they both look extremely strong this week. Rory came T3 here last year at this event, T5 in 2019, and we know what he can do with the driver. It is the best club in his bag. So Rory McIlroy looking like a great play this week as well. The final top shelf play this week, Tony Finau, $10,700, 20.9% projected ownership. And I can't give the narrative of strong off the tee players being what I'm looking at this week and not mention Finau. With that being said, I will say this price tag only a few $100s cheaper than the likes of McIlroy, and $600 cheaper than the likes of Rahm, and the ownership's similar amongst all three. So rather than go to Finau, I would prefer to go to McIlroy or Rahm. I just think they have more win equity, right? Like Tony Finau, his only win on tour is in an alternate field event. So he really hasn't shown that he can win in these full field, regular type PGA Tour events. So I would rather pay the premium or the little bit extra to go up to McIlroy or Rahm. But Finau does look strong. Came T6 here last year. Obviously gains off the tee, gains in driving distance, crushes the par five. So he does look like a strong play, can score above his DraftKings salary as a guy that usually gives himself chances at eagles on the par five. So I get it. I get why a 20.9% projection on his ownership is there. But for me personally, I'd rather go to McIlroy or Rahm. And that closes the top shelf plays. The mid shelf is about to be long as shit. So bear with me. We're gonna relight this joint. You're gonna have to bear with me for this mid shelf because we've got, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, yeah, we got about like 19 or 20 mid-shelf plays. So, yeah, I'm going to spark this. I'm going to get a drink of water, and we're going to get into it. The first mid-shelf play, Mr. Harris English, who's been on fire lately, man. $9,800 price tag, well deserved. 14.2% projected ownership. Yeah, English has just been an absolute monster lately, coming in 9th overall in the custom model. He's 14th off the tee, not going to gain a ton in driving distance, 59th, so about average in this field, but we can see that he's hitting the fairway because, that strokes gained off the tee numbers climbed up to 14. And if you aren't going to be long, as I mentioned, off the tee, I want you to be a great long iron player, and that's what Harris English is. Proximity gain from 200 plus yards. He's 14th in this field over the last 24 measured events, and from 175 to 200 yards, he's 28th. On top of that, the putter's been hot, and he takes advantage of par fives, so Harris English looking like a great play at that $9,800 price tag. 14.2% projected ownership is fine. And I do prefer English to this next guy, Sungjae Im at $9,600, 7.8% projected ownership. And Sungjae, another guy who's going to be about average in this field in driving distance, maybe a little bit below average, but he's going to make up, he's going to make up for that, I should say, with his accuracy off the tee. So strokes gained off the tee comes in 28th. He's 71st, though, in driving distance. And he doesn't really hit these long irons extremely well. Not Sungjae's, he's not elite in that skill set like Harris English is. 40th in proximity, 200 plus yards over the last 24 measured rounds, and 74th proximity, 175 to 200 yards. So that's what's, making me feel like I want myself a little bit more Harris English than Sungjae Im at $200 more. But with that being said, Sungjae still looking like a fine play at that $9,600 price tag and 7.8% projected ownership. The next guy, Brooks Koepka, $9,400, 6.8% projected ownership. And I mean, in a field like this, and Brooks Koepka at that ownership, 6.8%, I feel like you could always justify it, but I don't feel that strongly about it. Brooks has really played out this narrative that he's a guy that really only shows up for major tournaments, major championships. It seems like he treats these other events sort of as tune-ups, as ways to craft his game, to learn things that he can use in the major championships. But until he wins one of these sort of, I'll call them quote unquote less important events, normal events, I'm probably going to be off Koepka. But with that being said, he's Brooks Koepka. So he's underpriced. He's not owned. I'm just not sure where his motivations are coming into an event like this. So Koepka, $9,400, 6.8% projected ownership. I would rather go to Victor Hovland for $100 less, $9,300, 10.2% projected ownership. And Hovland is just a stud. I mean, at this point, we know this. He's coming in 14th in the custom model, 6th off the tee, even though he's 48th in driving distance. So you're going to find Hovland in a lot of fairways and a lot of advantageous positions. And as I mentioned, if you're not going to be long off the tee, I need you to be a stellar long iron player. And that's what Hovland is, coming in 9th in this field over the last 24 measured rounds from 200 plus yards out, and 34th from 175 to 200 yards. So Hovland showing that he can do it with the long irons. He'll find a lot of fairways and gain strokes off the tee. So looking like a strong play at $9,300. Just creeped over double-digit projected ownership at 10.2%. I'm absolutely fine with that for Big Dick Vic. At $9,100 is Matthew Wolff, and he only has 6.1% projected ownership, which I was a little bit surprised to see. Wolff came T21 here last year. We want bombers on this golf course, right? He's okay as far as the putter goes on these surfaces. So it's not like we're concerned about him completely gouging strokes on the greens. He's a decent putter as is anyway. And he's a good enough long iron player. 12th in this field from 200 plus yards, 50th from 175 to 200, but he's long enough off the tee that I don't see him being in that range as often as some of these other golfers are. So yeah, Wolff, he's been struggling with the off the tee game a bit lately, but if we can get Matthew Wolff of old, like baseline Matthew Wolff off the tee, he's going to absolutely smash at this price tag. And this ownership at what was it, 6 point? Wolff, 13.3% projected ownership. I was about to say, I was reading actually the projected ownership for the next golfer. So 13.3, that's more in line with what I would think. But still, looking great, looking underpriced. And the ownership looks about right. I would expect it actually still to be a bit higher, but thought it was at 6.1 for a bit, and I was like, well, wait a second. We're going to have to play all of the fucking Matthew Wolff this week. It's going to be wild. But at 13.3%, maybe just get a little bit over the field to Wolff because he does have the skill set to really smash at this price tag. The next guy at $9,000 flat is Scotty Scheffler, and he is 6.1% projected owned, and that makes sense to me because Scheffler missed the cut last week, wasn't great with the ball striking, was rusty, right? He looked it. He looked like he was rusty, and that he hadn't played in a little bit, and that affected him. But that's getting us an ownership discount this week, guys, and I love to take advantage of a good ownership discount. We know what Scheffler can do. We know what his upside is, which is to win this event. He got cut last year at this event, his first time playing it. I don't care. He's a phenomenal talent, and he's a guy that we can trust to hit those long irons, decently well. Scheffler, let's see here. So Scheffler's actually gone on a poor run on strokes gained approach. So he lost 2.3 strokes gained approach. He lost 2.3 strokes on approach at the American Express last week, and he lost 0.7 strokes on approach at Tournament of Champions. So that is the concern with Scheffler right now, is it looks like the irons are a bit broken. We saw his run from Memorial through the Tour Championship last year, culminating in that Tour Championship performance, where he looked like one of the better iron players on tour. And over the long term, he still has gained strokes on approach over his last 41 events. But here recently, the approach numbers have been a bit alarming, actually. He's still performing off the tee, which is still getting his tee to green numbers there. But it is surprising to see he lost 5.6 strokes on approach at the Houston Open and still was able to come in 32nd. So yeah, he's just been gouging strokes on approach here lately. So if he can turn it around, he's definitely going to look like a strong play. I'm actually going to have to say that I would just like to get a little bit over the field on Scheffler. I wouldn't go too crazy with him, based on the fact that his irons seem to be a bit broken right now. But we're going to have to monitor this, because as soon as we see the iron game start to make a turn in the positive direction for Scheffler, we're going to want to be all over this guy, because the driving numbers have remained steadily solid. He did lose tee to green last week at the American Express, but prior to that had gained in his last 3 events. So Scheffler's still looking like a solid play. He's not owned. He's a high talent and a volatile play, so a great tournament play, right? Because, right, he could miss the cut. Sure, that's within his range of outcomes. But a win is definitely within his range of outcomes as well. So he's going to be a volatile guy. If you hit on him, he's going to pay off big. And that's what we're after here, right, guys? We're after first place. If you're not first, you're last. It's Ricky Bobby approach. So we're trying to win some tournaments. We're trying to take down some big prizes. And sometimes you got to go to these low-owned plays and buy low on a guy like Scotty Scheffler. So $9,000, 6.1% projected ownership. Bubba Watson at $8,800, 14.9% projected ownership. Bubba seems to like this golf course, and you just want to roster Bubba Watson usually at places that he has a decent course history. So that's the narrative. He obviously bombs it. If the course fits Bubba's eye, which it seems to do, then I have no problem rostering him. Especially when you're on green surfaces that he's seemingly performed well enough on. to churn out decent finishes. Came T6 last year, gained 9.62 strokes total. Yeah, if Bubba likes it around a track, and it seems like Torrey Pines fits his eye, and his driving distance is going to give him a huge advantage, then yeah, we can definitely look to some Bubba Watson. Again, $8,800 price tag, 14.9% projected ownership. Ryan Palmer, 14.8% projected ownership. A guy that's just a great ball striker. Hits the ball a little bit further than you might expect. Palmer coming in this field, let's see here. Palmer comes into this field 34th in strokes gained off the tee, 45th in driving distance. So a little bit better than average in this field, which might surprise you. And the long iron game is absolute fire. On approaches 200 plus yards, he is second in this field. So yeah, he's not the longest hitter off the tee, but he's a little bit better than average in this field, and he's got the long iron game to back it up. So sign me up for some Ryan Palmer, who's also seventh in this field in strokes gained on the par fives, which is just a little, cherry on top. So Ryan Palmer, $8,400 price tag's fine. 14.8% projected ownership makes sense to me. I like Palmer a bit more, actually, than the next guy at $8,300. It's Adam Scott, only because the 20.3% projected ownership, I think Palmer and Scott should probably be more similarly owned just based off of Adam Scott's, recent struggles. Look, we're getting the ownership discount to Scheffler. There should be some ownership discount to Scott, who's coming in 101st in this field in approaches 200 plus yards. He is 18th in driving distance, but only 57th off the tee, so struggling with that driving accuracy a bit. And he's not been a great putter as of late. 58th in this field over the last 24 measured rounds, so don't feel super strongly about Scott, even though he's rating out okay in our model. I think Ryan Palmer probably would be my preferred play, and if I could get the extra $500 to go up to Bubba Watson, I would absolutely do that instead. Scott at this event came second in 2019. So yeah, the course history is on Adam Scott's side. The recent form is not. So I would just like to see a little bit of a haircut on the ownership, but he's an absolutely fine play at $8,300 and 20.3% projected ownership. I was like Will Zalatoris, $8,100. We're going to start to see, this guy rise up the ranks, I imagine, coming off the Korn Ferry Tour. He is a great talent, and I expect him to show it in not too long, to be honest with you. We've seen these PGA Tour rookies adjust really well, and especially in the COVID environment, they don't have as many crowds to contend with, right? Which I think helps, right, mentally and psychologically for some of these guys. So Zalatoris coming in 6th in our custom model, 15th off the tee and 24th in driving distance, so he can do it with the driver. He also can really do it with the long irons. 3rd in proximity, 200 plus yards. 2nd in 175 to 200 yards. This guy's got the skill set that we want around this golf course. 10.9% is fine. It should probably be higher. He's just not quite a known quantity on the PGA Tour yet, which we can take advantage of. So $8,100, 10.9% projected ownership, like Zalatoris. Love me some Cameron Davis. Cam Davis, of course, $7,900, too cheap. 13.2% projected ownership, too low. This guy balls every time we take him, and he is the prototype of what we want around here. 9th off the tee, 16th in driving distance, 17th on approaches 200 plus yards, 24th on approaches 175 to 200 yards, 12th on par fives, and 40th in putting. I mean, if we get some putting upside from Davis this week, he's going to pay off big time again, as he usually does. Don't think about it too hard. Just roster Cam Davis at $7,900. Cameron Champ at $7,900, 3.6% projected ownership. I mean, I don't really get this ownership projection. It's just too low. Quite frankly, it's too low. But let's see. Champ coming in 5th in the custom model, 11th off the tee, 1st in driving distance, 20 in proximity from 200 plus yards out, 8th in proximity from 175 to 200 yards out. The guy can't putt, 147th in this field. he's a good enough ball striker that if we can just get him to, be neutral on the greens, he will absolutely pay off this price tag as well. I like the idea of building a lineup where you put all these bomber guys who are being under-owned in the same squad. You get yourself Cameron Davis, you get yourself a Cameron Champ to pair him with, you get yourself maybe Bubba Watson, Matthew Wolff, and you see what happens. Because if this golf course plays even longer after Friday with the projected, forecasts of rain, having the guys that can bomb it out there will help. Next play I like is Jason Kokrak, $7,700 price tag. Kokrak, 46th off the tee, 30th in driving distance, 77th in proximity, 200 plus yards, 91st from 175 to 200 yards, but 4th in putting on these surfaces. So you're going to need him to run a hot putter if he's going to pay off this price tag, which is why I would prefer to go to guys like Davis and Champ and this next guy I'm going to talk about as well. But I did at least want to mention Kokrak because he is rating well enough for the threshold for me to mention him coming in our model here. So if you're a Kokrak guy, go and get yourself some crack, man. I would rather play Corey Connors at the same price tag, $7,700, 12.8% projected ownership. So only projected for a little bit more ownership. Connors 18th in the custom model, 10th off the tee, 50th in driving distance though, so you can expect he's going to hit some fairways. 13th though in proximity, 200 plus yards, 40th from 175 to 200 yards, and the guy can't putt. So yeah, we know what Corey Connors is. He's pretty much a known quantity at this point. He is a phenomenal ball striker who cannot putt. You're going to have to hope for a hot week on the greens. And if he does have a hot week on the greens, I expect him to pay off this price tag pretty easily. Next guy, the Gooch. It's the Gooch. Taylor Gooch, $7,600, 14.7% projected ownership. Been running a hot putter lately, and not the world's best long iron player, but a solid mid to long iron player. Proximity from 200 plus yards, 131st in this field. That's going to be a bit of a struggle if the golf course gets wet on Friday. So I'm not in love with the Gooch this week, but he's been running a super hot putter. So if you want to ride the putter to Gooch, and I also just love saying to Gooch, then you can roster Taylor Gooch. But there are better options this week. One of those options that I think is better is Charlie Hoffman at $7,500, 5.3% projected ownership. Coming in 10th in our custom model, 12th off the tee, and 11th in driving distance. So we can trust this guy to be gaining in when he's teeing it up, right? In proximity, 200 plus yards, 31st in this field, and 52nd in proximity, 175 to 200 yards. Really scoring poorly on the par fives, which is interesting to see. Coming in 103rd in this field on the par fives, and 44th in putting. So maybe it's some weird putting luck where he's making the putts on the par fours and somehow can't hoop birdies on the par fives, or maybe he just can't get home in two. But for him to be 11th in driving distance in this field, I can't imagine that distance is the reason that, holding him back from being able to get home in two on these par fives. So I expect that to sort of flip for him this week. Hoffman's just a guy that's a talented player at this price tag. Came T9 last year, so has some upside. Made 4 of his last 5 cuts at this event. So, yeah, I like Charlie Hoffman at $7,500, especially only being owned at 5.3%. And the last mid-shelf play is the man who's actually been cut his last 2 times at this event, but screw it. Mr. Carlos Ortiz, $7,500. Give me some Ortiz, please. 7.3% projected ownership. And, Ortiz is just a great ball striker, so let's roster him at this price tag, right? 12th in our custom model, 13th off the tee, 52nd in driving distance, 1st in proximity, 200-plus yards, 43rd proximity, 175 to 200 yards, 6th on the par fives. It's too cheap for a guy who's putting up these kind of numbers on the board, so we're going to go ahead and roster Carlos Ortiz at $7,500 and 7.3% projected ownership. And I'm going to respark this joint, and I'm going to get a glass of water. Or a drink of water. And then we're going to get into the SCHWAG bag, baby. And we do have one bomb this week. It's going to be a little wild. If you really like taking those shots, then you can roster the last guy I'm going to mention this week in the SCHWAG bag. But it's going to be interesting. A sub 1%er. The first sub 1%er we've given out in a while. Maybe since Bud Cauley. Can you guys hear that, like, crackling? When I hit this, it's weird. I don't know. Held it up to the mic so you could maybe hear it. Interesting. I don't know what that is, but we might need to put the premium shake out. Don't know if it can be trusted. That was interesting. All right, SCHWAG bag plays. Those priced at below $7,500 in DraftKings pricing. The first SCHWAG bag play, yes, we're going to go back to it. It's Eric Van Rooyen, EVR, $7,300 price tag, 6% projected ownership. And, you know, he really struggles on the PGA Tour, it seems, but I'm going to give him props. He seemed to be committed to playing more PGA Tour events this season and really putting himself out there. So I think he's going to eventually start to learn what it takes to contend on the PGA Tour as he starts to pick up more experience in these events. He comes 20th in the custom model, 21st off the tee, 53rd in driving distance, but 10th in proximity, 200 plus yards. So even though he's not long off the tee, if he has these long approaches, we can see that his long iron game is, you know, elite for this field. So I like EVR at $7,300, especially at only 6% projected ownership. Another guy only at 6% projected ownership here in the SCHWAG bag is Harold Varner III, HV3, $7,000 price tag. We haven't seen Varner since OHL last year, but man, he had a hell of a 2020 for himself, did Harold Varner. Established himself as one of the better ball strikers on tour that in this pricing range typically. For the pricing range we see him at in DraftKings, sort of like a Corey Connors, like they're just much better ball strikers than where they're priced typically on DraftKings. Coming in 29th in the custom model, 32nd off the tee, 68th in driving distance, 38th in proximity 200 plus yards, 13th in proximity 175 to 200 yards. Has not been scoring well on the par fives. He's only a neutral putter on these surfaces. But with the recent form that HV3's shown, at least the 2020 that he put together, his game seems to be a pretty solid fit for this golf course. You'd like him to be a little bit longer off the tee, but since his long iron game is well above average in this field, we can forgive his lack of distance off the tee. A guy who does not have a lack of distance off the tee, never has in his career, is JB Holmes, priced at $6,900, 13% projected ownership, coming in 28th in the custom model, 65th off the tee, but 26th in driving distance. Does not hit approach as well, 200 yards plus. He's 113th in this field, but he's long enough off the tee that I don't expect him to have approaches in that range as often as other members of the field. Proximity 175 to 200 yards. He's fine. He ranks 30th there. And he putts well on these surfaces. 24th in this field and 39th on the par fives. You'd expect him to have some upside there as well as a guy that can definitely get home in two and make some eagles. So JB Holmes looks strong. Usually we get an ownership discount on JB Holmes because he's one of the slowest players on tour and people just hate rostering him because they don't like the guy. But 13%, it looks like, you know, people are in on JB this week, and we should be some of those people. I don't blame them for being in. He loves this golf course, this event. He's gained 25.93 strokes total against the field over the last 5 events here. He only got cut one of those times, so he's made the cut 4 of his last 5 times. He has a solo 4th, a T6, a T16 last year, so yeah, lots of upside here for JB Holmes, especially at a sub $7,000 price tag, which it's too cheap, guys, so go get yourself some JB Holmes. I also like me some Luke List. Give me some Luke List, coming 17th in the custom model, 8th off the tee, 8th in driving distance. So this guy's going to get it done off the tee. 22nd in approaches 200 plus yards, 124th proximity, 175 to 200 yards out. You would like to see that number be a bit better since that's probably the approach range he's more often going to find himself in. But he's scoring on the par fives well enough that I still think he's worth rostering, especially given this price tag. Look, there's usually going to be at least one, red flag for these guys down here because that's why they're priced down here. If there weren't a red flag, they would be more expensive. So the fact that he's 16th in this field in strokes gained on the par fives is coupled with his driving distance and off the tee numbers, that's good enough for me. So Luke List looking like a pretty solid play. And now we start to get to some of the guys that are kind of bombs. So Killer Keith Mitchell. $6,700. You normally want Keith Mitchell on Bermuda, but if you want to take a shot that Keith Mitchell somehow has a neutral week on the greens, he's going to be a steal at this price tag. 24th in the custom model, 16th off the tee, 22nd in driving distance, 24th in proximity, 200 plus yards, 86th in proximity, 175 to 200 yards. So that not great, but still pretty about neutral in the field, a little worse than that. And the guy can't putt. So if he is neutral this week on the greens, he is going to be an unbelievable play at this price tag. So you can look to Keith Mitchell if you really want to take a shot. Again, I mentioned these guys down here in this pricing range now are sort of more bombs. I would rather live in that low $7,000 range, really cut off at Luke List at $6,800. But if you have to dig below that, then at least one guy that you can look at is Keith Mitchell at that $6,700 price tag. I also like Jonathan Vegas at $6,500 a bit, 4.1% projected ownership. He's just a guy who hits it long enough off the tee and gains off the tee. He's 7th in strokes gained off the tee and 12th in driving distance. Doesn't do anything else well, but to have an elite skill set off the tee at this price is good enough for me. So Jonathan Vegas, $6,500, 4.1% projected ownership. Looking like a solid play. For the same reasons, I would potentially look to, if I had to, at this price tag. Will Gordon, $6,300, 5.5% projected ownership, 43rd off the tee, but 9th in driving distance, 5th in proximity, 200 plus yards, 6th in proximity, 175 to 200 yards, and not a good putter. So the guy's a good ball striker, especially measured against this field, usually playing in weaker field events, right? But he's a good ball striker, and he hits it long, and that's going to suit him well around here. So if you need to dig down here, $6,300, 5.5% projected ownership. That's a lot higher number than you normally see for someone priced down here, unless DraftKings just made some big goof or mistake. But people are seeing what Will Gordon's putting out in the custom models here. So 5.5%. If you have to dig down here, that'd be the guy I'd go to. But I'd rather just not have to dig down in this pricing range. And I have one bomb for you guys, as promised. One super bomb, sub 1% owned, projected ownership, and the flat minimum in pricing. It's Grayson Murray, $6,000 flat, coming in 19th in the custom model. Gained 2.9 strokes tee to green last week at the American Express. Gained a stroke off the tee. Gained 3.3 strokes on approach. Was dreadful around the greens and on them. Lost 1.4 strokes around the green. Lost 0.8 strokes putting. So, a guy who we know is a talented player. Had to take some time off due to that back injury. Who knows, maybe when he's potentially going to start rounding back into some form. If ever. I hope he does, but if this is the start of it, he's gained off the tee in his last 5 events. And to gain 3.3 strokes on approach, it's a total crapshoot, guys. He's 0.5% projected owned, but if things really are starting to turn around for Grayson Murray, his pedigree, at least as a young golfer, is good enough for me to believe that he has some potential to really make some hay here and pay off this price tag and really differentiate us, because not only are you differentiating yourself by having someone in your roster that's 0.5% owned, but it gives you a lot of flexibility for the rest of your roster build if you take a guy that costs the flat minimum at $6,000. So if you want to experiment with something crazy this week, Grayson Murray, who has made one of his last 9 cuts. I am telling you maybe to play a guy who's made one of his last 9 cuts. So take that for what it's worth, but it looks like it's starting to turn around for him a bit. And, we've seen in the past what he can be capable of. So, yeah, it was no longer than January of 2020 that he came 10th at the American Express, gained 8.1 strokes tee to green. If we see that guy return, then we're getting an absolute steal at the flat minimum, and nobody else is playing him. So, with that being said, that concludes this episode. I hope you guys check out tons of the Farmers Insurance Open this week. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to play myself a Grayson Murray lineup, so I'm going to be rooting for Grayson Murray. I'm probably going to keep, I'm going to have to tweet or, keep Instagramming at the Gooch until maybe I can get him on the show or something like that. We can talk to him. That'd be dope. Get some PGA Tour Pro on the show. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and win some shit on DraftKings. Can someone please take down a tournament? We have some scares now and again where it looks like we have some sweats, I should say, not scares. We don't want scares, we want sweats. We have some sweats where, it looks like maybe we have a chance, and then on Sunday, the boys just don't get it done. So let's get a big week this week, HTG fam. I love you guys. Please continue to support me. Throw me the likes on social. Follow me on YouTube. All that shit. All that good stuff. You guys know what to do. And yeah, with that, I'll see you next week. Peace.